but I'll go ahead and introduce myself for those of you who don't. I'm Christine Capra, co-founder of Greater Than the Sum and developer of sumApp and founder of this sort of social system mapping approach to mapping. And my partner, Tim, he's my co-founder in all things, who just waved, try that again, bigger, mister. Okay. And our producer, Kara, who works with us on all of our gritty things. And then Lisa Negstad, who has been my planning partner for this session, which is a brand new session, doing new things. And so I'm excited that you're all here, and I'm just going to go right ahead and hand it over to Lisa to jump in.
Hey, welcome everybody. Nice to be with you. And Christine, I'm wondering, when do we start introducing the Mentimeter piece? Because we're going to do some introductions on that.
Okay.
We have an hour and a half together. We're going to do sense making using human systems dynamics, and we're going to go kind of step by step. So all of that will make sense as we go, but we're starting here with.
So Kara needs to put the.
Give me 1 second.
Sorry, I didn't forewarn you that was going to come right up.
Yeah.
Right away.
Hold on. Okay, here we go. And that should be in the chat right now.
Okay.
So maybe Christine, do you mind just explaining how the Menti works since anyone's new to Mentimeter?
Yeah.
Kind of get us set up on that.
Yeah. So if you click on the link that Kara just put in the chat that says today's Menti, click on that, open it up in it'll be in a window. You'll have to toggle back and forth from that window to the shared screen or the Zoom screen occasionally. But anyway, so you'll open it up, it'll be on a slide, and you can just go ahead and there'll be a question there, and you can input your answers. I will control when we go from slide to slide, so you can't move ahead. And we're going to do quite a bit of back and forth between Mentimeter and breakout groups and full groups. So we're going to be sort of moving along briskly. Lisa, is there anything else I should have said?
That's great.
Okay.
I was just putting mine in. So yeah, invite you to find that on your whatever device you're using to find the Mentimeter, and if you could fill out and submit, and then you'll start to see them show up here on your screen. So you know, with Zoom, when we share a screen, it takes over your computer, so you might want to minimize it so you can also have the Mentimeter up and use that as well. And there's a lot of us here today, which is exciting, and also means that we'll get a chance to kind of hear from everybody and see who everybody is. And once we get more than one, it looks like we kind of get a scroll going in the middle here.
And I think you can also put click enter. I can click enter to slow the scroll down.
I think it's you. Yeah, it's you that can do that. Yeah.
Is it going too fast?
I think it's good. People can let us know. Chat is a great place to let us know too if something's not working.
Yeah.
And it's no problem if you need to leave early. You can do that.
And I know of one person who's going to join us late.
Okay. It's nice to see everybody here and read about you.
Yeah.
I'm just going to give you a few more seconds to read through it so you can see who's in the room. Get your screen set up. So we're going to be talking about social system mapping today, and it is really okay if you're just new to what a social system map is. That's not a problem at all. So we're not going to get into the mechanics of a social system map, because today is about how do we use the map, how do we think about our networks and make sense out of it? How can we use it to help us make sense out of our network? And so we're going to be putting you in breakouts too with people who are experienced with social system mapping. So that's also going to help with that if you're more of a newbie to it. And we want to get a sense of the potential and just know where to come first. We want you to get a sense of the potential and know where to come for support. So we are going to have you do a poll here just so we can get a sense of how many, is that right, Christine? Do we have a poll about?
Yep, I just put it up. So how familiar?
Okay. Yeah, just to kind of get a sense of the room and how experienced you are with social system mapping. So if you go to your Mentimeter, you can click on the next question and answer, and then we get this lovely pie chart in front of us. What a nice mix in the group. So social system mapping is a new visual language to talk about a social system. And this is great. So we're seeing this. I'm wondering if we should keep moving, or do you need to, do we need to allow a little bit more time?
Can we, might be useful to start using the, like people, if like some way of signaling that that most people are set to go.
Yeah, one way to do that is if you look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there's a reactions. On the bottom of the screen, you see the reactions button, and you can either give a thumbs up, or one of the green, there's like a green circle with a white check mark. Either one of those will give us an indication of whether you're kind of, you put your information in the Mentimeter. We're actually going to use Mentimeter quite a bit in this meeting, and I'm just scrolling through to see where we are on the thumbs up or green check marks.
I think they
go away
they
too.
go away. Yeah. So maybe it would make more sense to use the participants. If you go into participants, is that where you did your green check?
Yeah, that's an easier place to see it. That's
Yeah.
good.
Anyway, I think we're good on this one.
Okay, so that's helpful. We also have another quick poll for you because we're going to be talking about human systems dynamics, and it's work in the area of complexity theory. And we just like to get a read of the room of anyone who's familiar with human systems dynamics, and also invite you to help us out. And so there's a next question here on the Mentimeter. And we'd like you to fill that next question out. How familiar are you with human systems dynamics?
And you'll notice they're colored by how familiar you are with social system mapping. So we can see where there's a lot of overlap versus like a whole bunch of people experts in one and a whole bunch of people experts in the other, but no overlap.
Also, it's totally okay to not know anything about human systems dynamics.
Yep.
This just helps us know for organizing the rest of the time together.
And I see we have several new people, a handful of new people who've joined since we got started.
Welcome, welcome. If you are just joining, we are in the Mentimeter, and you can find that link by going to the chat and clicking on that chat link, on the link to Mentimeter in chat, and then you'll be able to join in these polls that we're doing just to get a read of the room as we get started. And we're right now on the question about whether or not you have familiarity, and I cannot say that word right, with the human systems dynamics.
I think we're good with that.
Yeah, it looks like we're good. So that's helpful. Those of you who've had some experience, you can chime in and help us out too as we introduce some of the concepts for that, to use that for sense making. Any of you who've been exposed to systems thinking or complexity theory, a lot of that will make sense to you. And if it's all new, it's fine, because what we're going to introduce today, some of these tools are really simple and accessible, and they will start to make sense as we go forward. So what we're going to have you do is just do a quick breakout just to warm up, to be able to speak your voice and share with a few other people who are here, because we do have a lot of people in the room. And what we're going to invite you to do in that breakout is just discuss the content of the 3 polls already. Introduce yourself to each other, get to know each other. We are going to keep you in the same breakouts through this next hour and a half. And so this is just your first 5 minutes to get familiar and maybe talk about the couple polls that we just discussed about social system mapping or about human systems dynamics.
Welcome back. Ah. Glad to see you all back. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and just talk briefly a little bit of HSD theory, and then we'll go back to breakouts. And like I just Zoom quit on me.
We can hear you a little bit, Christine, just a little bit.
Yeah, we can hear you, but we're not seeing, yep, I think she's having to come back in. We'll just give her a minute. She has the slides, so.
Am I back?
You're back.
Can you see my screen?
No, you need to share again.
Okay. Hopefully that will not kill me again. Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I'm gonna, so this is, what I wanted to do is talk briefly about, just give you a high level picture of one of the HSD, one of the fundamental HSD theories, which has to do with complex adaptive systems. And this, we call it the Cde model. Lisa's going to talk about it more in a second, but the Cde model is basically a distillation of, in a complex adaptive system, it's the 3 conditions that define how a complex adaptive system changes and how it develops over time. So, and the C means container, difference means, D means differences, and exchange means, E means exchanges. And so one of the reasons that we find this very useful for social system mapping is because a network is a complex adaptive system. And so we feel that the better the network guardians understand the dynamics of complex adaptive systems, and the better all the members of the network understand the dynamics of complex adaptive systems, the better able they are to, everyone's going to be to both create a strong network as well as use that network to accomplish their larger goals, whatever they are. So their system changing goals. So this is both a framework for examining our social system map, but it's also a framework for thinking about how to create transformation in systems. So I think handing it off to Lisa here. Yeah. Did I miss something?
So no, that's great. And you know, sometimes we use the term self-organizing system also as a complex adaptive system. And so let's just talk through, we're going to play with these a little bit, give you a chance to kind of think about your own network with these different components of a complex adaptive system. So container, let's talk about that one first. So it's any bounding condition that separates from the environment. So it holds a system in which the patterns form in a complex adaptive system or in a self-organizing system. So examples of it are, you can see here on the list, individuals, groups, values, even things as small as like a meeting or a meeting agenda is a container. Also it could be history, context that's happening. It's really a lot of different things that can be containers. And we just want to give you a little bit of an idea of what some are, but have you think too to your network. So throughout all of this, as we're talking through this, hopefully you can be starting to spur some ideas about your own networks. And so we'd like you to go to the Mentimeter now and think about what are some containers that are holding or needed to hold your network together. So what are some, and sometimes you can think of them as similarities that you have in your network too, affinities or magnets that kind of keep your self-organizing system together, that contain your system. So we're going to go, let's see, do we have the Mentimeter back in chat again?
Yep.
I think that might be helpful to put that link back in the chat. And you'll see the question there as you go to that Mentimeter link. Thank you, Kara. And just be thinking and brainstorming, what are some different containers as you think about your own network? Some good ones coming up here.
So I see the SDGs, those are an example of goals. Goals can be containers.
That's great.
Values, yep.
Values are coming out across a lot.
Vision.
Yeah, these are great. Like the generative conversations. There's also kind of relationships and quality of relationship can be a container. There's geographic locations.
Projects are containers.
Wow, what a great list.
Yeah.
It's interesting how values stay at the core, which makes sense when you think about a network.
Yeah, and vision is always close.
Place, vision, yep, projects, and yeah, that's great. Okay, we're gonna keep moving here. We're gonna do several kind of rounds with this model today, so this won't be your only chance to talk about containers. We do want to go to differences now. So this is the distinction across parts of the system. That's often where, it's where we can have tension, we have difference, but it's also where it points to the potential for change, that transformation in a system. So examples of difference are things like interests, you see them on the list here, assets, level of experience, cultural differences, learning styles, roles, informal or formal power within a network, influence is a piece of that. So you can see what geographic location is a difference, might be a difference, different focus of work. So there's endless examples, but let's just play with this again too, pointing you back to your own network and going to the Mentimeter. What are some important differences in your network or in the system that your network is working within? So you could do it in either one, just in your network itself, or if you're working on within a system that you see, what are the differences that you see? So you'll be going to the Mentimeter again and going to the next question, and you'll see them coming up here. Some really good examples coming up here. I'm sure all of you know this, but the bigger the word, the more of you have put that word into the examples. Word cloud. So power is really interesting. It's one thing we talk a lot about, right? In network development, network weaving. That's a great list.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead, Christine.
Michael, are you seeing the word cloud now? Can't tell.
No, still not. I mean, I see a fig leaf or a palm tree on the screen share.
I think that's your input screen. Is there another window behind it that?
On the Zoom?
No, in
the input screen doesn't have the fig leaf, Christine.
Oh, it doesn't.
Blank. Yeah. If anyone else is having that problem, let us know in chat.
I don't know what to do
on the share screen. one thing that might just work is just to exit and come back in.
For Michael?
For Michael, yeah.
Okay. Shall we move to?
Yeah, let's move to the next one. So the CDE, so the next one is exchange. And this is the flow or transfer of energy, resources, information within your system. So examples are funding flows, friendships, swapping skills, trust, the level of trust you have, bartering. You see the list here, right? Collaborations, language. So like giving and receiving, asks and offers, sometimes we put on our maps, right? That's an example of exchange. So let's, again, go to your own networks. Think about what are examples that you've seen of exchanges happening or need to happen, or maybe you wish there were more of, not enough of. And again, you're going to go to the Menti link and put your answers in for that.
And Michael, I think you came back in. Are you seeing the responses now in the shared screen?
I see the example. Oh yeah, now I see it. Yep.
Okay, great. You will have access to all the previous inputs in a later stage. So don't worry that you didn't see them before. You'll get to see them, the previous ones. You get to see them in a bit.
Some really good examples coming in here.
Yep.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
So you're adding yours in, but hopefully you're able to kind of read and take in what everybody else is writing too as examples, really good examples. It was fun to play with that. And we're going to do another cycle in a little different way, but I'm going to turn over to Christine to set us up for the next tool we're going to use from HSD, from Human Systems Dynamics. We're going to put these two together.
Okay. So moving on to the next slide. So this quote is from David Cooper-Ryder, who co-created Appreciative Inquiry, that we live in the world our questions create. And I think that is one of the fundamental, like the most fundamental concepts of human systems dynamics. Is really, I see it as sort of a way of perpetually generating more questions and different questions from different angles. Just it's like a question generating practice in a certain way. You can distill it down to that in my mind. And so this next thing we're gonna look at is related to that. And also, for those of you who don't know this, I've been introduced to HSD models and methods for a long time, known a lot of HSD practitioners. Just this year, this spring, went through the HSD practitioner training myself, and so have spent the last 6 months much more deeply in it. And the thing that has gotten really clear to me is that it's not a one-time thing. It's not a problem with a solution. It's a praxis. And so this quote from Paulo Freire just really reiterates for me: liberation is a praxis, the action and reflection of men and women upon their world in order to transform it. And so the model that we're going to look at now is the adaptive action model. And I know that many of you have seen the what, so what, now what framework. And I don't know if that originated with HSD or somewhere else, but it's we're going to look at it in using the HSD concepts. So I've been introduced to it from a number of different perspectives, but in this instance, we're just going to be specific to how HSD uses it. And to me, adaptive action, this what, so what, now what cycle, really is a praxis of reflection and action upon the world in order to transform it. So that doesn't happen in one shot. It's an ongoing cycle. And so we can think of our social system mapping sense making and our social and our network development and our transformation, all of which is a journey. It's not a destination. It's an ongoing, take a step at a time kind of a thing. And so, and so the what, when we're talking about, when we're in the adaptive action cycle, the what is, what's the challenge we're looking at today? What data do we have? What do we know? What are we concerned about? So we start with what? We have a picture of the current reality and something that we would like to focus on relative to that current reality. The so what is where we bring in a number of models and methods. And so the CDE that we just introduced you to is one of the main models and methods that we'll be using, but there are a lot of other models and methods. So when we're in the so what's part of the cycle, this is where we either, if you're thinking in terms of theory U, going deeper, going below the surface, the so what is a way of taking a step back and going, changing from, we have what's, and we usually sort of have this knee-jerk instant response from problem to solution. So what is where we step back and we say, what if I don't do it the way I normally do it? What if I look at it a little bit differently? The HSD models and methods are ways of helping us structure that inquiry to create better questions than what we might have started out with. And then, so we go through this, I'm sort of calling it a discipline structured inquiry. So what phase? And then out of that, we'll find the one small thing that we have control of that we can take action on in the near term. And then we see where we're at next. Then we go through the what again. So I think that's where I hand it off to Lisa.
So we're going to use this what, so what, now what cycle for this next step, and have you use the map of our community of practice of those of us who work on social system mapping. And we're going to go back to the what. Do you mind popping up the what, so what, now what slide again, Christine, just to have that?
Yeah. And
so the what here is a bit of a challenge that we're having in our community. So we're a community of practice. We work on these social system maps. And our challenge is that we want to generate more peer-to-peer learning. And we've been really kind of focused on Christine leading us as the founder of Social System Mapping, and we're wanting to shift to more of a true community of practice. So we're framing for you an example of a what and kind of what we're noticing in our network. You can also be thinking about your own network as we go through this, but we're going to use this as an example to do an adaptive action. And that's the what. And I would maybe ask Kara or Christine if you could just put that what in the chat so everybody can read it too, what the challenge is. And then what we're going to do is the so what, we're going to use the Cde model. So as we think about that challenge in the community of practice, how do we shift from to more true peer-to-peer learning in a community of practice in our network? And we're going to go one by one, looking at the containers, differences, and exchanges, and seeing what might emerge for us. What might we discover? What kind of structured inquiry, as Christine just said, could help us in that so what stage that might emerge as one action we'd want to try in the now what step. So in this so what step, we're going to move into that now. And we're going to keep practicing this in the future too, in our future sense making options. So Christine, I think what we're going to do is give a map embed link. Yep. Maybe Kara's going to pop that in.
Yep.
This is a map. This is a social system map of our community of practice. And we're going to have you go into the breakout and just focus on the containers. So you're going to just focus on that first way to look at a self-organizing system or a complex adaptive system. The containers, any bounding condition, might be really similarities or any bounding condition that that is of interest in this map. And you will have some map practitioners in your group with you, and some of them might be likely on this map and have used the map. What else do we need to say before we go into the breakouts?
so what we're going to do is we're going to have you, again, just focus on the containers. I'm going to move the Mentimeter to the container slide. So while you're talking it through, if you could put the containers that you're seeing on our map into the Mentimeter, so we have that for future reference. And just for the, so the map is part of the what? The map is actually the data set that we have about this community at this point in time. So as we're looking at the map, we'll be looking for containers. We might also see that there are containers that we can conceive of that we can't see on the map, and we might want to add those to the map. So you're both looking for what's there and what really could be there, and we would like to add it. And so part of what we were thinking was that for this exercise in your small groups, each small group is, we're going to sort of pretend that each of you is a team of consultants who have been brought in to advise this community on how to make it stronger and how to address this one particular problem. So you're going to go through the C and the D and the E one at a time, starting with just the containers. And then after that, we'll take it to a next step, and you'll be eventually looking for giving us some advice on how to make our community stronger. Is that questions? Lisa, are we good? Oh, and then how many, I can't remember, and I'm like totally lost in my agenda. I think 5 minutes to look for containers and then come back.
Yeah, but let's just take a quick look here at the containers that came up as you looked at the community of practice map.
Oh, there's one I want to put in.
So that's interesting. There's some things coming up. There's like the big one is shared interest, but I think this pronounced periphery is interesting on a container, and we still have some that are coming in, which is great. People are still sticking it into the Mentimeter here, which is excellent. But we will keep us moving here, and we're gonna have you pop back into the breakout. So we're gonna be doing some back and forth, and now have you go to the map and look at what are the differences. So what are the differences you're seeing, maybe not seeing in this, that, you know, differences that actually would be helpful that you're not seeing. So we're kind of asking both sides of the question, and we're going to have you go into the breakouts again, looking at the community of practice map. And we're still in this so what section where we're trying to really just have a structured inquiry using the containers, differences, and exchanges. So we will put you back into a breakout for another 5 minutes to have you look at that map together, brainstorm, and put it into the Mentimeter as you're seeing differences on this community of practice map.
In this particular map is we have a lot narrower range of differences because this community has a very specific targeted focus, which is learning about social system mapping and sharing social system mapping. And so if your community, so you want your map to be really focused on the context that exists in. So if you had a really broad, if your network was working on really broad goals, your differences in your containers would be much broader. In this instance, they're very specific and they're very, and so it's not surprising that we're seeing fewer differences in this map than we would see in other maps, just given the focus of the network. Okay, Lisa, are we ready to go to the next?
Yeah, and yet there are some, right? There's some really good ones in here.
And,
so that's excellent.
Yes, and we were going to come back to them. I'm not downplaying the differences at all. They're
right, exactly.
And we'll get into that a little bit.
That's really cool.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's go to exchanges.
So back into the breakouts and look at the exchanges on the maps. Great, thank you. Okay, so did you want to just say a last thing about the review of the last slide before I jump in?
It's great. It's fun to see, and I see a few more added in, so that's excellent. Some really good exchanges that you noticed, and yeah, we're gonna shift to the next step here.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing for just a moment, and but then I'm gonna lose my. Okay, so when we're looking at the C and the D and the E, one of the things that we want to not lose track of is the differences in any complex adaptive system, because the differences are kind of, I think of them as both where the danger lies and where the magic lies. So the differences are where there's energy in the network and where there's tensions. And that energy and tension can either be harmful, and especially in a network where there aren't whatever the containers are, they're not, you can't hold somebody in a network if they don't want to be in a network. So it's all voluntary. So especially in a network, if the differences are not managed in a healthy way, your network can just dissolve and disperse and fall apart. Whereas if they're managed in a healthy way, then they can be the engines for transformation. And they can be the engines for creativity and innovation and what I like to think of as magic in your network. So we're going to do a very simple examination of the differences in the social system map network. And a thing to think about is when we look at the differences in any context, if there's too few differences, what you end up with is no energy, a lot of sameness, no innovation, echo chambers. It's essentially fairly boring and reaffirming of the status quo and dull. So that's too little difference or too much sameness. If you have too much difference on too many dimensions, then you have a very volatile, a very highly energized situation. And so you want to be attending to both of those and then be thinking about what to do about that. What kind of exchanges will help with that? So for today, because we don't have, we didn't want to we're moving really fast anyway. We're going to give you 10 minutes now in your small groups and ask you just to look at the differences and to look at and to talk about where might there be too much sameness in this network and where might there be a lot of difference in this network that we need to think about. And we'll have you put into the Mentimeter the top 2, 3, 4 dimensions of difference, whether it's too much sameness or too much difference in the Mentimeter. And then we will use those to unpack those in our next session. So we're not going to get all the way to the so what in this session, just given the amount of time we have, but we're going to pick our next sort of target thing to focus on next time. But also you'll have 10 minutes. So you really want you to be able to unpack and explore and have a conversation about why those differences are significant as you're picking them. Okay, so just as you're going into your breakouts, what we want you to remember is just put the differences, the few similarities and differences into the Mentimeter so that we have them for next time. Wow, thank you. So I just want to say this is a great list, and these are very important differences that I can attest are sources of either horrible not movement and horrible tension. And so I just wanted to just comment on, as the person at the center, which someone has called out, which is absolutely appropriate and correct. I can say that I see all of these too much samenesses and too much differences, and they are a huge concern to me. And I would like for us to figure out how to change that and leverage our differences and be much more innovative in terms of how we generate the community. And that's the thing I don't know how to do. I have a great interest in self-organizing systems, and I'm a bit of an egghead and a bit of a techie person. And so I'm very aware that I'm sort of stuck in this spot that I don't know how to shift. And I just wanted to say that because I have found myself often in other networks sort of judging people in this role and feeling like, oh, they just don't understand and they should just do a better job of managing things. And having been in this role now for a while, I can say, yeah, we really need structured inquiries to help us sort it out and work through it, because I just want to say that I feel like this is all very true, and I'm looking forward to us having further conversations about it.
Yeah, he who knows it feels it, right? So Bob Marley's son. Christina, I wanted to say to you that what I said in a breakout, I didn't put in my thing, which is, for me, there has to be an on-ramp to collect the data that we need later, because I have folks, and not just a few, quite a bit of folks collecting a certain type of data. So if I can amend that process to make it easier later to come back and do a social systems map, that's a winner. A non-starter is having to go back and collect a bunch of new data again and start, it's essentially a new process.
Yeah.
So if there was an on-ramp where I could, place hold until we could, get enough input and then manipulate it a little bit, move this here, move this there, and then share it back, people might get excited, but it's a non-starter to take one process and then and then have to go back. So I wanted to offer that. And I think that it's the roles and functions and who gets to show up and who doesn't, because we have power brokers and systems willing to lean in, but not going to spend time map making, but so much. We have grassroots folks who are out on the streets. Yep. And then there's the consultants who are paid to do this, right? Yep. So if there's an on-ramp, I think that could lead to it. And that's what I'm talking to Jim and calling you back once we get some more time in there. Yeah,
great. Thank you so much for that, Michael. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Okay. So Lisa, I think we're handing it over to you now.
We're having just a few minutes before we're wrapping up, and we would love to get your feedback on this session. This is a new session. You can tell we're working out a few kinks on it. A new way to do sense-making sessions. And so we're going to ask you again to go to Mentimeter and go through a few questions. We really love your honest feedback. The more honest you are, the more that will help us for the future.
Seriously.
And yes, seriously. And then we want to leave a few minutes just for other voices in the room. Like Michael just made a great comment and other ideas. So let's start with the Mentimeter, and then we'll open up and just see if anyone else wants to put their voice in the room. So let's start with this first question. We have 4 questions for you. We're going to run through quickly. Again, let's maybe put the Mentimeter link again in the chat, just so everybody has that. And that would be great. So the first question is this: what did you like? I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's there, it's on the slide.
Okay.
Yeah.
Menti link is in the chat now if you've lost track of that. And our first question is, what did you like about today's session? And I'm just going to be quiet for a little while to have you answer that, and then we'll go to the next one.
Sorry.
I do want to move us on to the next question because we have a couple more. Thank you for this input. The next one is, what did you learn today? And you can go to the slide there for that on the Menti link. Give you a few seconds to fill this out. All right, I'm going to shift us to the next question. Thank you for your answers here, which is, what would you change about today? This is where we'd really love your feedback, so we can know going forward what would make it more helpful for you. So anything you would change about today's session? Great ideas coming in here. Thank you for those. I'm going to shift us just in a few seconds here, see if there's any other ones you want to pop in here. You can still do that as we move to the final question. And that is just, what big questions are you left with? And as you fill out this on the Menti, also just invite anyone in our last few minutes here who wants to speak into the room about anything related to today, related to our session. Any reflections or thoughts you're having. Just go ahead and unmute and speak.
Hi, this is Jim. One thing that sort of came up over and over was that difference between the periphery and the core, the tightness there, the level of knowledge. And so one of the questions we had is what resources does the community have to actively connect the periphery and the core, whether that's the periphery reaching in or the core reaching out, or activities that bind us and create less of a difference.
That's a great question, Jim. And it points to like the next time and looking at what exchanges might help with that periphery core. Excellent. Other questions or reflections?
I guess
I am looking at, oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. I guess I want to say that it was a great metaphor for me because I'm on the outside of this map. I'm not really connected because I don't feel like I know what I'm doing, but I'm Christine in the middle of my map. And so I'm also trying to figure out the whole thing. So it was perfect for me.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Excellent. All right, I'm looking. Yeah, Christine, did you want to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say, shall we do our closure ritual? Okay.
Yes, that'd be great. You go ahead.
Okay, so for those of you who haven't done this, it's very simple. We just all unmute if you want to do this, and I'll count down. And when we get to one, when I get to one, then we all just sort of give each other our greetings and our appreciation, our blessings for the rest of the day or the rest of the evening for your next phase of the journey until we see you again. So let's all unmute. And as soon as everybody's unmuted, or almost everybody's unmuted, I'll start to count down. And we'll go, okay, so 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much,
everyone.
Thank you.
With you.
Great day.
Bye.
Macht es
Bye.
gut.
Yeah.